You've been lied to about Canadian beer, and the 8 brands sitting in your fridge right now are filled with cheap corn syrup, pesticide residues, and artificial flavoring designed to trick your taste buds while multinational corporations disguise cost-cutting as Canadian tradition. Independent lab tests reveal shocking ingredient shortcuts and chemical residues in the most trusted names, from Molson Canadian's metallic adjunct grains to Keith's fake IPA hop extracts, proving that patriotic marketing has nothing to do with what's actually in your glass. But what if I told you only 2 Canadian beers are made with real ingredients and traditional brewing methods? Would you know how to spot them before your next purchase? Now let's escalate this because Coors Light, brewed under license in Canada by Molson Coors, takes cost-cutting to scary new levels with corn syrup as a main ingredient instead of real barley, creating a beer that's just empty calories without any real taste. And even though they market it as a cold, refreshing drink, many consumer reports show it ranks near the top for a chemical called acetaldehyde, that nasty compound that makes your hangover worse and creates that sweet, gross smell when your can gets even a little bit warm on the counter. Coors Light sells itself as the perfect summer beer, the one you grab at the cottage or the campsite. But what they don't tell you is that the corn syrup fermentation process creates higher levels of this hangover chemical than traditional barley brewing. And once you know what you're tasting, you can't ignore that artificial sweetness coating your tongue, that slight medicine-like quality that has nothing to do with real beer flavor and everything to do with cheap shortcuts that save the company millions while your body pays the price the next morning. Molson Canadian uses almost the same exact recipe as Coors Light with just tiny changes to the hops, meaning you're basically drinking rebranded junk with different marketing slogans. So when you think you're choosing the patriotic option over the American one, you're actually getting fooled by the same corporate recipe with a maple leaf slapped on the label. The deception gets worse because these 2 brands dominate hockey arenas, music festivals, and sporting events across the country, making Canadians think they're drinking different beers when they're really choosing between 2 versions of the same cost-cutting formula. And the prices stay high because the marketing budget is huge while the ingredient budget keeps shrinking year after year. Sleeman Original Draft pushes this deception even further by acting like it's a premium heritage brand that goes all the way back to 1834, using old-timey labels and nostalgic commercials that make you feel like you're drinking a piece of Canadian history. But ever since the Japanese company Sapporo bought them in 2006, the quality has dropped fast. Documents leaked by workers who used to brew at Sleeman show the company switched to cheaper barley blends and cut the brewing time from 8 weeks down to just 3 weeks. And those shortcuts directly hurt the flavor in ways regular drinkers started noticing around 2010, but couldn't quite put their finger on. That stale bread taste you sometimes get, especially from bottles that have been sitting on the shelf for a while, comes directly from rushing the lagering process, because beer needs time to develop clean flavors and smooth out harsh compounds. But when you cut that time by more than half, you end up with off flavors that no amount of cold temperature can hide. Former brewery employees have said in interviews that the pressure to produce more beer faster came straight from corporate headquarters after the purchase, with production quotas that made proper brewing basically impossible, and quality control staff who raised concerns were ignored or let go. Sleeman charges premium prices at the beer store and LCBO, sitting on shelves next to craft options and imported beers. But the liquid inside those heritage-labeled bottles is now bargain grade at best, with reduced malt character, virtually no hop aroma, and that telltale cardboard staleness that comes from beer that wasn't given enough time to mature properly, proving that a famous old name means absolutely nothing when multinational corporations take over and start chasing profits over the recipes that built the reputation in the first place. The problem runs deeper than you think, because independent laboratory analysis commissioned by beer advocacy groups in 2022 found that Bush, widely available at Canadian discount retailers, contains trace amounts of glyphosate herbicide residues from barley crops, with levels that, while technically below Health Canada limits, still raise serious questions about long-term consumption and why a beer needs pesticide contamination at all when organic alternatives exist at similar price points. You see those red and white cans stacked high at every corner store, priced to move fast, and what you're really buying is barley treated with weed killer that doesn't fully wash out during brewing, leaving behind chemical traces that accumulate in your body over years of weekend drinking and backyard parties where you grab the cheapest case without thinking twice about what actually went into making it so affordable. Former agricultural inspectors have gone on record explaining that industrial barley farming relies heavily on glyphosate applications right before harvest to speed up crop drying, meaning the chemical is present at maximum concentration exactly when those grains get shipped to breweries. And while big beer companies insist everything meets safety standards, they conveniently ignore that those standards were set decades ago, before anyone understood cumulative exposure effects or bothered testing. What happens when you drink this stuff 2 or 3 times a week for 20 years straight? Lakeport, that aggressively cheap brand dominating Ontario convenience stores, underwent formula changes after Labatt acquired it in 2007, and blind taste comparisons reveal it now contains even more adjunct corn than Labatt Blue itself, essentially making it the bottom-tier overflow of an already compromised production line, with higher carbonation to mask the thin body and virtually non-existent hop character. Walk into any beer store in Ontario, and you'll find those distinctive orange and black cans selling for almost half the price of everything else on the shelf. And there's a reason for that rock-bottom pricing that has nothing to do with efficient production and everything to do with using the absolute cheapest ingredients legally allowed while cranking up the bubbles, so your tongue registers something, anything, beyond watered-down corn syrup with yellow coloring. People who grew up drinking Lakeport in the 90s swear it used to taste different, less metallic, less aggressively fizzy, and they're absolutely right, because acquisition documents show Labatt immediately reformulated it to use their surplus corn adjuncts and reduced brewing time to maximize tank turnover, transforming what was once a decent budget lager into liquid cost cutting that leaves you bloated and unsatisfied but too buzzed to care by the third can. Keith's India Pale Ale commits perhaps the most offensive deception by calling itself an IPA when it contains barely 40 IBUs and uses hop extracts instead of whole or pelletized hops, meaning that hoppy aroma you smell is artificially enhanced flavoring designed to trick your senses, while delivering none of the actual resinous oils and alpha acids that define real India Pale Ales. And former brewmasters have gone on record saying, Labatt's corporate cost mandates make authentic IPA production impossible under current ownership structures. That distinctive red label with the sailing ship logo makes you think you're drinking something with heritage and character. Some bold beer that stands up to the IPA name, but crack one open next to an actual craft IPA, and the difference hits you immediately in how thin it tastes, how that hop aroma disappears within seconds, how there's almost no bitterness on your tongue, despite the style demanding assertive hop presence, because what you're tasting is chemical hop extract sprayed into the tank at the last minute, the brewing equivalent of artificial vanilla flavoring trying to pass for real vanilla beans. And it's all designed to capture the IPA trend without spending the money on actual hops that would cut into profit margins and require complete brewing process changes that corporate accountants would never approve. But here's the good news, because 2 Canadian breweries are doing it right, and you need to know their names before you waste another dollar on corporate deception. First, Mill Street Organic Lager, now available nationwide in liquor stores from Vancouver to Halifax, uses certified organic barley and hops with absolutely zero adjuncts, no corn syrup fillers, no rice extenders, nothing but pure malted grain that you can actually taste in the glass, and undergoes traditional 4-week lagering in temperature-controlled tanks that allow natural flavor development instead of the rushed 3-week cycles that plague mass-market brands trying to maximize production turnover. Despite being owned by Labatt since 2015, which initially raised red flags among craft beer purists who feared another sellout, Mill Street maintains completely separate production facilities with independent quality control, verified by third-party organic certification bodies, who conduct unannounced inspections and lab testing, ensuring that every batch meets standards the parent company would never impose on their flagship products. Pour it into a glass, and you'll immediately notice the difference. A genuine golden clarity without that artificial brightness created by chemical clarifiers. Clean, crisp flavor with actual malt sweetness that coats your palate like honey instead of vanishing into watery nothingness. And noble hop balance from Hallertau and Tettnang varieties that provide subtle spice and floral notes without the harsh bitterness of hop extracts, all without the metallic finish that makes you reach for water after 2 Molsons, or the next day regret that comes from acetaldehyde-laden adjunct lagers. The organic certification isn't just a marketing gimmick printed on the label to charge an extra $1. It's a legally binding commitment enforced by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that guarantees every ingredient comes from verified pesticide-free sources, meaning no glyphosate residues from Roundup-soaked barley fields, no genetically modified corn derivatives, nothing entering your body except what humans have been brewing with for centuries, before corporations discovered they could replace quality with chemistry. Second, Steam Whistle Pilsner. Brewed in Toronto's historic Roundhouse at 255 Bremner Boulevard, where you can actually visit and watch production through floor-to-ceiling windows, commits to using only 4 ingredients: spring water, malted barley, hops, and yeast, strictly following the German Reinheitsgebot purity law established in 1516 that prohibited anything else from entering beer, because Bavarian brewers understood that quality needs no additives. Their full ingredient transparency extends beyond vague marketing claims to actual batch-specific details posted on their website, including hop varieties, malt sources, and water mineral content, and their brewery tours, offered free every day, show you exactly what goes into every signature green bottle, with 0 restricted areas or trade secrets, because they have nothing to hide from consumers who've been betrayed by opaque corporate brewing. Independent taste panels, organized by beer journalism organizations, consistently rank Steam Whistle among North America's top pilsners, not just top Canadian pilsners, but genuinely world-class examples of the style, for its honeyed malt character derived from Moravian barley that provides complexity without heaviness, and floral check Saz hop finish that delivers the authentic noble hop profile European brewmasters demand, proving that Canadian breweries can compete globally when they prioritize quality over quarterly profits and respect drinkers enough to brew beer instead of alcoholic soda water.